Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Welcome to another episode of Monday Markets. As far as BTC goes, we're still at this monthly range high, and there isn't a whole lot else to say. There are 3 weeks left until this monthly close. We're currently still trading at that level. We've spiked previous month's high and rejected, so still signs of resistance at 23.3, 23.4k. If we look on the weekly, unsurprisingly, confluence there in the form of this range high we've spoken about, up to 24.3, and so the market's just reacting quite reasonably. Nothing too drastic yet from the range high. As far as pullback levels go, if there's going to be a visible pullback, as in 1 or 2 weeks or something, just a deeper retracement, which we haven't had yet, as before, I think some version of 20k basically has to hold. Otherwise, the market starts to look like garbage. Otherwise, this is just classic chop, churn, a strong market, which is at resistance. So not a lot has changed there. You can see on the daily time frame, market structure has changed, or I guess momentum to a decent extent. Here you had impulse, very short consolidation, another strong impulse. Here you've just had consolidation, attempt to break out, but you didn't get continuation. And that's because here we just reclaimed a big level and we're in the middle of nowhere, whereas where we are now, we are into a big level, so you can't expect the same type of price action necessarily. And the price is essentially the same one as it, exactly where it was when we covered Monday markets last week, so obviously my views aren't going to be radically different. I recall last week we talked about this consolidation with the range high at 23 point, basically the monthly level in one form or another, and then the range low I think was unfolding at the time at 22k. This is quite a tight range. There isn't a ton to trade, even on kind of lower time frames. And again, the context is far less favorable because unless you're getting really strong continuation signals, you are at resistance, and that sort of makes it difficult. Also, if you look at how many times these range boundaries have been tested by now, it's quite a lot. I personally wouldn't feel comfortable fresh trading, as in just, buy support, sell resistance without any type of failed break or anything like that. These range boundaries anymore. We've been here for a little bit too long. One thing that comes to mind is we have had a couple of failed break attempts at the range high. It wouldn't be uncommon for the market to try to do the same at the range low. So one thing that I'm bearing in mind for this week, while I may not be fully convinced to just do business at the range low per se, if we were to come out, spike a few of these boys, and then offer some sort of risk-defined reclaim, price action, whatever, then I think that would be much more attractive towards the range midpoint and the range high. Even then, I'd probably be pretty conservative with any type of bounce targets, given the overall context of monthly and weekly resistance. But if this is going to be our consolidation, you might as well look to trade the consolidation in one form or another. It's just we've spent so long at these levels. I'm going to need something a bit more compelling, a bit clearer, rather than just outright support resistance. As far as bigger pullbacks go, if this ends up being kind of impulse, distribute at monthly support, monthly resistance rather, and puke down, as I said before, that would look scary, but at least you have a clear, almost a single level to look at, some version of 20k holding. We've discussed those levels at length in the Bitcoin levels to watch videos. That's not terribly, not going to rehash that same bit of content. But generally speaking, if this daily range breaks to the downside, you basically have must hold levels at around 20k, and anything through there starts to look like garbage. So while it may be scary in the short term if this range breaks to the downside, I think you at least have the benefit of there being a rather straightforward line in the sand as far as must hold levels go, which is kind of reassuring in itself. But again, the tricky part with making these videos sometimes, if I'm going to be completely honest, is that the market's just done nothing really, right? Like we knew 23k is monthly resistance and it's just ranging there. So that's it. I could do this in 30 seconds and move on, but I'm just trying to add a bit of color, a bit of commentary, but sometimes it do just be like that. As far as ETH goes, honestly, very similar. Just stuck at monthly range high with a spike above previous month's high as well. If we look on the weekly, no one likes the weekly time frame. The only thing I would say is if there's a flush lower, I would look out for this kind of triple higher low structure. That looks very susceptible for some sort of poke or prod. I don't like these very nicely stacked trend line-esque higher lows. So if there's going to be any visible rejection from this monthly level, I wouldn't be terribly shocked if we saw some trading through those lows, especially given this pre-breakout consolidation has been rather messy. But essentially the same, right? The market came into monthly levels, spike, no clear rejection yet, but hasn't been accepted above yet either. So just chopping at these high time frame levels. honestly, at least Bitcoin has a decent sort of range high, range low structure. For ETH, there is no equivalent range low structure that I like. It would just have to be the amalgamation of these lows, and then maybe on the daily time frame, as we've discussed before, the actual range low for me, purely in terms of structure, is closer to 1500. 1514, 1500. That to me is at least a clear daily level, and it would also line up with the idea of the market being at an interesting point if all of this gets spiked. But otherwise, in this type of area where the market is now, there's no real higher time frame support that I like. So again, the same shit sandwich, right? It's chopping and churning at monthly resistance, but not in a way that's offering clear bearish continuation setups or rotation setups yet. But it's also not at support because there's just this whole chop fest before it. So I think at best, this week we'll just be waiting for clarity to see if the monthly timeframes are going to do their job and offer a compelling rotation to the downside, or if this is all just kind of breakout city, that might be worth pursuing through those breakout levels. So yeah, and again, we are dealing with monthly timeframes. Sometimes, unfortunately, this stuff can take a while to unfold. So I think some patience is very welcome. As far as legacy goes, it doesn't really complement the picture, at least from the bullish side. Don and I discussed this on Casual Friday, but the reason legacy has my attention once again is because, so you have Bitcoin and ETH at monthly resistance and no clear breakout yet. But you also have legacy lining up with high time frame resistance. S&P into this monthly sort of range high cluster at 4130s. It's also at this weekly level at 4170s, one of those classic overthrow ones, range high, overthrow, back to resistance. You've got some confluence in the 41s. That's not particularly nice. Similar consideration applies to the NASDAQ. Less clear, and I just generally follow this a bit less. But still, there is some weekly structure coming in at, 12.7s. So you can start to build a picture of, range highs in Bitcoin, ETH, S&P, NASDAQ. And it's kind of like, okay, that's at least far less obvious than it was 1, 2, 3 weeks ago as far as bullish continuation. And while correlations with the dollar have been falling, so it's not as inversely correlated as in the past, this thing is offering some basically a visible bounce for the first time in months. Again, it's very early, could be too soon to tell and turn into a nothing burger, but we were tracking this monthly cluster for some time, and it looks like with a spike of previous month's low, we finally had a reaction there. Now, I think it might spend some time within this base between 104s and 101s. That would make sense to me. But if this thing really starts to rip, even if it's not the dollar crypto correlation, I think that will spill over to the S&P, and then that correlation is still much more likely to be intact. So, and again, the benefit of having Altcoin Thursdays, I don't really need to talk about these too much, but we will on that day. So if you enjoy and want to see more Altcoin Thursdays, leave a like on this video. But I guess summary, one, sorry it's boring, right? I'm fully transparent with you. Sorry it's boring. Majors still churning at monthly SR / macro range highs, BTC at 24k stuck, I can't count, ETH at 1.7k ish stuck, SPX, where is that level, at 4100s stuck, some evidence of dollar bounce, high time frame. That's kind of all we have. I know I almost sound defeated in my tone making this video, but it's because it's just a bit boring and a bit choppy, The preceding weeks were pretty good for momentum continuation and the market riding off the back of the 20k reclaim, and things are just slowing down a bit now because we've reached a point, the sort of high time frame range highs, where you would expect things to not go as smoothly as they would in the middle of nowhere. So that's kind of the summary we're dealing with. Hopefully, things pick up this week. I'm not aware of any particularly important catalysts, but who knows? Another day in crypto. And we'll see if we start to get emerging evidence of either clear continuation or clear reversal from these high time frame pivots. And again, granted, they are monthly time frame for the most part, but the weeklies and the dailies should still be able to add some color as to how these things will resolve one way or another. That's all. That's it from me. Bit flat, but you've got newsletter tomorrow, Don on Wednesday, Altcoin Thursday, is another casual Friday. So hopefully not too boring and something to tide you over, so you have an understanding of where the high time frames are at. So yeah, that's it from me. Hope you have an excellent weekend, and I'll see you later this week. Bye-bye.